Hi. Hey guys. What's up? Hi, I'm Yuksh. And I'm back. 따라따라 더럽다 발리고 빌리잖아 나무와 만내 밤으로 반가워요 만나서 반가워요 와요 브레이커 Hi. Okay. We were building a notes app while learning Node.js. Itu something JS, Next.js. I don't need to do anything on that. Okay, hi. Gania Saba बेखबर है तूそうだったよね Okay, there is nothing surprising in the component. We can now navigate to the new view page. File-based pages. Next, we shall create the view nodes that renders the set of nodes following the convention of the Next.js app router. Next.js following the convention of Next.js router app router. We will create the directory app nodes, and inside it the file page.tsx with following content. There is nothing surprising in the local host is 3000 actually. Oh, I am Jabunjar Billy Samanida sorry. Okay, yeah, there is nothing surprising in the component. We can now navigate to the new view. Okay, we shall eventually save the nodes to a database. We shall eventually save the nodes to a database. To prepare for the transition, let us refactor those to the file app services nodes .ts. Okay, we create an array of services folder, and inside that we create this nodes.ts file, and we put our array over here, and then that's just a variable. Okay, helper variable, yeah, and then we create this arrow function which is gonna return nodes. Okay, and we export it, and then we create this another function which is gonna add the nodes too. It takes two parameters, content and important, content of string type and important of boolean, and then it pushes the node. It pushes the node to the nodes array. Yeah, like that, and then yeah, and this variable is used over here. The helping variable. The service export now. The function get nodes with the obvious behavior. The service export. The service export. Now the function get nodes. Okay, the service export. Now the function get nodes with the obvious behavior. To anticipate the next feature, we also added function add node to the service. Okay, in earlier parts of full stack open, we separated backend API call into a services directory. Here, okay, backend API call. In earlier parts of full stack open, we separated backend API call into a services directory. Here we follow the same principle. App services directory holds modules responsible for data access. Right now, get nodes simply returns a hard-coded array, but later we can swap in a database query without touching the page component at all. App nodes page.tsx becomes app nodes page.tsx becomes now like this. Okay, yeah, of course, it is worth pausing to reflect on what is happening here. All of our components so far, the homepage, the layout, the homepage, which is this, the layout, are React server components. They are server components, and the browser receives ready-made HTML. They are rendered entirely on the server. Okay, the browser receives ready-made HTML, no JavaScript for these components is shipped to the client at all. Creating new nodes. I did it tomorrow. I think till here I did something like that, till here, maybe till here. We can read that. Okay, creating new nodes. The next thing to implement is obviously the creation of new nodes. We already have a root, nodes, new setup. The next thing to implement is obviously creating new nodes. The next thing to implement is obviously creation obviously the creation of new nodes. We already have a root nodes new setup, so let us create the component nodes new folder, and inside that page.tsx with the following content. We made that made over this. Boom, baram. Okay, form looks fine, but it does nothing. Of course, here how should we implement the form submission? In earlier parts of full stack open, we would have added an on submit event handler and used it to manage the form fields. Okay, that approach requires a client component, since event handlers and hooks only work in the that approach requires a client component, since event handlers and hooks only work in the browser. Event handlers and hooks Jaco event handlers Jaco. A block of code or a function that runs automatically when a specific action like a mouse click, key press, or page load happens in the program. It lets software react dynamically to user input instead of running code in a strict unbending order. Since event handlers and hooks only work in the browser, however, Next.js offers another option: server actions. Okay, server actions. Next.js offers another option: server functions, actions. I mean, a server. Do we have that? Okay, a server action is a function that runs on the server. Okay, a server action is a function. Server action is a function that runs on the server, but can be called directly from a farm in the browser. But can be called directly from a farm in the browser. Let us now create a directory app actions. That's app and then actions, and then we create this node.ts. For the actions, contents of the following is like that: bum, param, bum, bum. Okay, the action create node takes form. The action, okay, that is an action. Okay, actions are functions. So that's an arrow function. It takes and takes form data and uses the get method to get the data and store it inside these components. Okay. And then we use this, we imported the add nodes. What you all that from where did we import services nodes? Okay, services, we imported these functions, and then this function we can pass on these two variables, and boom, 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 we redirect to this page after. Okay, well, okay, it's just that okay, okay, we shall eventually save the nodes to a database. To prepare for the transition, let us refactor those. The services export now the function. The service export now the function get nodes with the obvious behavior. To anticipate the next feature, we also added function and in earlier parts of full stack open, we separated backend API calls into a service directory. Here we follow the same principle. The app services directory holds modules. Okay, this directory holds modules responsible for data access. Right now, get nodes simply returns hard-coded array. But later we can swap in database query without touching the page component at all. Hi, the action create node takes a form data, as I said, as parameter and uses get method to access the form values. It then uses the function add node defined in the app services node.ts to save the created node to the list of nodes. Okay. Finally, it calls redirect. Finally, it calls redirect to navigate. Finally, it calls redirect to navigate the user back to the nodes list. The use server directive at the top. Okay, this use server directive at the top of the file marks all exported functions are server actions. These all functions are server actions. Okay, all like we've only created one, but whatever we are gonna yeah, whatever the function is going to be in this file is going to be a server action, server function, exported function, server action. The server action is passed as the action prop to the form. Okay, we import it, we export from here, import it, and then boom, here action as an action, we pass it. Okay, action prop pass as the action prop to the form. When the form is submitted, the browser sends the form data to the server as a post request. The server action executes and the page is updated. Hi, all without writing any client-side JavaScript. This means the form component can remain in the server component. Okay, all without writing any client-side JavaScript though. Any client-side JavaScript. This means the form component can remain in a server component. Okay, a form component can remain in a server component. Remain a server component. Okay, not in a server component. But how does this actually work? When Next.js compiles the application, it detects every function marked with use a server and generates a unique HTTP endpoints for each one. Okay, you got it? Let me explain it one more time. How does this work? Okay, like when Next.js compiles the application, it detects every function marked with use server and generates a unique HTTP endpoint for each one. It generates a unique HTTP endpoint for each one. The action create node prop does not embed the server function in the client bundle. The action and generates a unique HTTP endpoint for each one. The action create node prop. The action create node prop does not embed the server function in the client bundle. It does not. The action create node prop does not embed the action create node prop does not embed the server function in the client bundle. Instead, Next.js replaces the function reference with a hidden identifier pointing to that endpoint. Okay, wait a minute. And generates a unique HTTP endpoint for each one. Okay, my unique HTTP endpoint for each one. The action create node prop. The action create node prop does not embed the server function in the client bundle. The action create node prop does not embed the server function. Does not embed the server function in the client bundle. How do I understand it? Does not embed the server function in the client bundle. Instead, Next.js replaces the function reference with Next.js replaces okay, I'm trying to imagine. Instead, Next.js replaces the function reference with a hidden identifier pointing to that endpoint. When the user submits the form, the browser makes a standard post request to the generated endpoint, sending the form data along with it. Sending the form data along with it. When the user submits the form, the browser makes a standard post request to the generated endpoint and sending the form data along with it. Okay, mama. Tomate. Boom, boom, dupota. Ching chang ling, palang ting dumpling. Solly. JavaScript throw new error, React for whatever. No area, fast refresh, rebuilding, repair. Is that fast? Milliseconds. Is that fast? Neither. On the server side, Next.js receives the request. Okay, after the submission, the post request is done. Next.js receives the request, looks up the correct server action. Okay, looks up the correct server action by its identifier and calls it with the form data. Calls it with the form data object, with the form data object. When the action completes, and in our case calls redirect. Okay, the action is completed and then it calls the redirect, and the server sends back a response. The server sends back a response that tells the client to navigate to the new URL. Okay, navigate to a new URL. The browser never needs to know anything about add node or the nodes array at all, as all of that logic stays entirely on the server. Let us have yet another look at the end of the server action. Okay. So the command redirect is called to take the user back to view nodes that lists the nodes. The traditional server-side renders apps would do a post redirect get in this case. Okay, the traditional server-side rendered apps would do a post redirect and get. Post redirect get in this case. With the Next.js app, the approach differs a bit. Instead of browser performing a full page redirect and get request, full page redirect and get request, the server responds with the internal instruction that tells the Next.js client-side router to navigate to. Client-side router, okay. It's the ring. With the Next.js app, the approach differs a bit. Instead of the browser performing a full redirect and get request, browser performing a full page redirect and get request, the server responds with the internal instruction. The server responds with the internal instruction that tells the Next.js client-side router to navigate to nodes. The router then fetches only the new page content. The router then fetches only the new page content. Okay, the router instead of the browser performing a full page redirect and get request, the server responds with an internal instruction that tells the Next.js client-side router to navigate to nodes. The router then fetches only the new page content. The router then fetches only the new page content, the React server component payload for the nodes page, the React server component payload for the nodes page, and updates the view without a page reload. So we still get the redirect after post semantics, but transition is faster and smoother since Next.js handles it as a client-side navigation under the hood. I'm not sure if I fully understand this, but kinda I'll get it someday. Static rendering. Our app seems to work nicely during development. However, if we build the application for production and run it, we will notice a problem. Let us build the app and start it in production mode. We're gonna start it in production mode. Should I? Okay, let's start it in production mode. Sorry about that. Okay, npm run build. We're gonna build it. We're creating an optimized production build, and let me try to start it. Tushko. Bro, my SSD is full and I have all the code in my hard drive and it's very slow. Content here. Isn't that a lot of time? Like 1,044 and this one only took this. Boo. Yeah, I think npm start this thing. npm status this. Status this. Status this. Status. If I do that, status this. मुझे को इतना बताए कोई कैसे तुझसे दिल ना लगाए कोई. Mama. Notice the symbol. Yeah, I notice it. Notice the symbol next to the every route. We only have 2 routes though. What do you have so many? 2. Shouldn't it show 3? Not found though. Okay. Oh yeah, like 4. Shit. Notice the symbol next to every route. This means all pages are static. They were pre-rendered at build time into HTML files. When a user requests nodes, Next.js server, Next.js serves the pre-built HTML immediately without running any server-side code. This is great for performance, but it creates a problem. If we create a new node using the form, the server action executes and as the node store data. The redirect then takes the user back to the nodes list, but since the page was pre-rendered at build time, the user sees the old cached version of the page and a new node does not appear. Let me show you what it's talking about. You see all these. Yeah, you see that. Let me try to add a new node. We are adding a new note. Let's make it important. Okay, and then we click create. That should add. Okay, that should add here in the build mode, right? It was working fine, it was showing the card over here, but now it's not. We have been redirected, like, after we clicked on this, the server sends a a post request is done, that data is added to the nodes array, and then but after the action is completed, we are redirected back to this notes page. But here, cause the page, this HTML page was given to us pre-rendered, so this is the old cached version of the page that it is showing after that redirect, after we click. Okay, so for that reason, okay, just to see the updated page over here, that should also include the new data. We'll read it furthermore. The user sees the old cached version of the page and the new node does not appear. During development, npm run dev, this problem is invisible. Of course, in development mode, Next.js renders every page fresh on each request, so you always see the latest data. Okay, this is well-known pitfall. Code that works perfectly in dev can break in production. The fix is to tell Next.js that the cached page is stale after a mutation. We do this with revalidate path. Okay, we gonna revalidate the path before a redirection. So the call redirect path nodes tells Next.js to invalidate the cached version of the nodes page. The next time someone requests that route, Next.js will re-render it with a fresh data instead of serving the stale build time version. Okay, as a rule of thumb, whenever a server action modifies data that affects a page, pair the mutation with a revalidate path call for every route that displays that data. Okay, if we are mutating data, then we should pair the redirection. The server action modifies the data that affects a page, pair the mutation, like we are pairing this mutation with devalidate path for every route that displays that data. So we are gonna, just we need to do is revalidate path, and then we will see it. Okay, we just don't need to revalidate path, and revalidate path. There are two. Which one we are getting? Cache revalidate. I think no, there are not two. My bad. Revalidate path. There are two. Revalidate Mamaika, and we are revalidating this path. So now again, once again, if we try to add a new node, second time we are adding a new node, baby. Okay, this is the name. We'll make it important. Okay, that's boom. We submit the form, and why is it not? It should notes revalidate path. Chatto matta. Revalidate path. Revalidate path. Should that not do it? Let's add something, okay? As. Let's add as. Okay, no, as is not showing. Oh, always test your app. Oh, what? The call revalidate path tells am I doing something wrong? Long this revalidate path. That's the Next.js. Like it's gonna tell the Next.js to invalidate the cached version of the notes page. The next time someone requests that route next.js will re-render it. Next time when someone requests the route, Next.js will re-render it with a fresh data instead of serving the stale build time version. As a rule of thumb, whenever a server modifies data that affects a page, pair the mutation with a revalidate path call for every route that displays that data. Okay, always test your app with npm build to catch caching earlier. Is it? Should I not? Why? Is it because of this? That should not be. That's absurd. If it's because of this. The build output markup for static and for dynamic are a help. Always test your app. I think I need to restart it. Yeah, man. So this ne. So nan this ne. So nan this ne. So nan da. So nan da. Like we'll run it like npm over like run build and like npm start. Like can you do like that? She No way. Okay, I need to do that. Shut up. What I ask you are. Okay, let's run the build first. Let's see. Running TypeScript though. That is still static, pre-rendered as static content. Nande. Why? It is static. E. Oh, it's adding. Oh, do this is gone. Do the show. मैंने क्या राइट करता हूँ भाई मैं new note important note unimportant that is important unimportant important hi but like it's not showing this. It's still like static, pre-renders as static content. Okay, the build output markers O for static and F for dynamic. Have for indicator of which route are cached. So these routes are cached. Okay. Pre-rendered HTML we get for these pages. These routes. Blog list. The exercise of this part use a blog application that should be familiar. Come on, like what I have done. It's the same thing. I just need to create my. I ain't doing that. Okay, the exercise of this part use a blog application that should be familiar from our previous parts of full stack open. In the exercise, you will build the same application using Next.js. Create a new Next.js application, set up a navigation bar with links to home and a page and a blogs page. Create the route blocks that renders a hard-coded list of blocks and the URL. Each blog should have fields ID, title, author, URL, lakes. You added these two things. That's that's not that. Somebody hire me for making zombie noises. Hi, so this ne. Sorry. Hi, I'm Yogesh and I take a break now. Smooth like butter, criminal under gutter. Okay, sorry. I told you, I'm a bit cracked. I crack out this. I'm from Asgard. Bye. break time. Break time. break over, break over. Hi. You need to give sound effects. Sound 6 of the 24. 24 of the samurais died. Samurai. Samurai.ライどうやらデビスさてやられたのどうやらライブなんですね。視聴者回数तुझको इतना बताए कोई मुझको कैसे तुझे से दिल ना लगाए कोई हाय 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 रब्बा ने मुझको बनाने में कर दिया उसकी खाली तिजोरिया काजल की स्याही से लिखी है तूने जाने कितनों की लव स्टोरिया केसरिया तेरा इश्क है पिया अंगजा हाथ नाम दिन बीते सारा पार्टनरशिप तेरे फिक्र में दिन सारी तेरी खैर मनाऊं आज जोड़ के मौसम में भी रंगी के नारों जैसी ममता के तारों जैसी आँखें तारों जैसी काजल की स्याही से लिखी तूने जाने कितनों की लव स्टोरिया केसरिया तेरा इश्क है पिया अगर जाऊं जो मैं रात न आऊं दिन बीते सारा तेरे फिक्र में रहने सारी तेरी खैर मनाऊं 25-24 days दिन बीते सारा बीत गया मेरा दिन बीत गई मेरी रात बाकी बात बाकी हो जाएगा कुछ तो हो जाएगा कुछ तो हुआ है 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 तेरी जो बातें हैंはいबता क्यों अब भी डरता नहीं तो ये आसमां से तेरी वो पर तेरी बातें तेरी जो बातें हैं हाय और क्या है ये बातें दे बता क्यों अब दे डरता नहीं माने तू उड़े जा रहे आसमां से तेरी जो बात हैはい、ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。Enjoy, guys, enjoy. Enjoy my king. ピッチピッチピッチピッチピッチだね。ピッチピッチだね。Enjoy, guys. That's fine. You can have my shields. Earned my shield. You guys earned the shields. You have my shield. You have my shield. Okay. Shield of green. Shield of copper. Shield of green. For you all people. To all the people out there. Shield of green. तेरी जो बातें chocolate. Okay, we do this and then we complete this. Smooth like butter, criminal and the gutter. You ruined the whole song. Smooth like butter, criminal and the gutter. Sorry. Okay, where am I? Okay. Hi, page of a note. Okay, we are not doing any these exercises, like it's the same thing, like copying it. Yeah, I've already done this in like in this one. Okay, you see this cursor? Yeah, in this. Yeah, but no, I don't want to do it again. Hi, despite it is probably an overkill, but let us make an individual view page for each node so that the node with ID would be in page with URL nodes 10. Again 10. For that we need a dynamic route segment. The way we define that in Next.js app router is quite interesting. It is quite interesting. We can create a directory app nodes ID and the usual file page.tsx inside of it. That is that, and then we create, okay, that's a new one, not the new one though, we create it over here. Okay, only over here, create like that, and then we give it ID, and then we create a page.tsx. Okay, बदला लूँगा मैं, एक एक आंसू की बूंद का बदला लेकर रहूँगा मैं, बदला लूँगा और बदलाव ला दूँगा, बदला लेकर बदलाव ला दूँगा। लादू तेरा नाम है लादू, मेरा नाम भी लादू, तेरा नाम है लादू, मेरा नाम भी लादू, तेरा नाम है लादू। ओ ओ ओ ओ ओ इदा 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 लाओ 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 लाओ। Okay, now despite it is probably an overkill, but let's make make an individual view page for each node, so that the page with ID would be so that the node with ID would be in a page with URL nodes 10. For that we need a dynamic route segment. The way we define that in Next.js app router is quite interesting. We can create a directory app nodes ID and the usual file page.tsx. Dynamic segments allow you to create routes that are generated from data. You got that? Let me read that again. Dynamic segments allow you to create routes that are generated from data. For example, instead of manually creating a route for each individual blog post, you can create a dynamic segment to generate the routes based on blog post data. Okay, so a dynamic segments allow you to create routes that are generated from data. For example, instead of manually creating a route for each individual blog post, you can create a dynamic segment to generate the routes based on blog post data. To create a dynamic segment, wrap the segment folder in square brackets. For example, in the app slug page, okay, slug is dynamic, okay, like that. And then export blog post slug, yalla, that is slug, okay. We give it a string, it is a string slug, we await params, and then bada boom, bada chom. मन तो बहुत बुरा करता है, बहुत बुरा मन करता है। ख़त्म कर दूँ इसको मैं। ख़त्म क्या, कुछ तो ख़त्म कर दूँ मैं। ख़त्म। Const is going to be a node page, okay, and yeah, I'll be that, and then we create a simple one, okay, and that is gonna return something, okay, which is going to be this, and we have a div, and it can have a this h2, okay, and one more kind of thing is p, it's gonna have, okay, and then we can export it. We export a default node page, okay. You got that, okay, you should. So now what we do is reduce. When the node is not found, we call not found, okay. If it's not found, we call not found. So here is that if, okay, yeah. So before doing that, we can kind of get node by ID, number ID. So for that we need to create this as well. So it is going to be actions. That is an action for sure. It is. Is it? ちょっと待った。App service. It's going to be in service, right? With a function that returns a node based on an ID. Yeah, sorry, I'm like, it's not an action. Const export const and get node by ID. And it's going to return a node. It's gonna take a node first. Okay, it's gonna take ID first, not a node. Sorry. ID of numbered type, and then it's gonna number it type. Notes dot. We're gonna run a find function over it, and then note. We try to find if node dot ID is equal to the ID that we have. Okay, if it is, then we've got a node. We export it, and then we just go to our ID page, and we just try. We not try, but we const. That is going to be our node. We make that call. Okay, and we're gonna provide it an ID. We should provide it an ID. Okay. Oh, the ID that we are gonna get it from here, which is going to be, right now we don't have a variable over here, so okay, no variable else ID, but we params. Okay, params. I think I should make these practices. I should practice params. Params, that's the type. Params, params, that's a promise. Oh, hey, promise. And shit. ID dot string. I kind of forgot. I don't get it, man. Shit, that's so simple. Chidani. Okay. It happens, you forget. Oh, yeah. ちょっと待って。दूर जो है खड़ेちょっと待ってね。Okay, I'd like to do a little more. 5 more. Yay! That's a lottery. Oh shit. Karori Maito. Neferno. I think Anshul is the second time winner. Lucy Luma, she's also second time. And Esco La Mangaka, that's also second time. Hi, what's up? Oh, it's still going on. दूर जो है खड़े मैं खड़ा था और खड़ा ही रहेगा। मैं कोई ऐसा गीत गाऊं, आरज़ू जगाऊं, मैं कोई ऐसा गीत आरज़ू जगाऊं। Games are dead for now. I hand you the architecture blueprint directly after. Time is money. We have a strict deadline. Okay, let's break down the server component and bridge it directly to your existing knowledge. If you wanted to build a page for a specific node in a standard React single page application, okay, you would define a route. Okay, you would define a route like nodes ID. Inside the component, you would use a hook to get the ID from the browser's URL, and that is ID, and use params. We use that. Okay, this happens on the client, the user's browser. The component loads, checks the URL bar. The component loads, checks the URL bar, grabs the ID, and then fires off an API request to get the data. First, the component is gonna load. Then it's gonna check the URL bar. It's gonna grab the ID and then fires off an API request to get the data. It's gonna fire off an API request and it's gonna get the data. Okay, the React, the Next.js app router way, what your code is doing. Next.js handles routing via the file system. It handles the routing via the file system. Okay, this file. Oh, wow. Hi, Anshul Negi. You have the copper shield. You're a copper shield member. Hi, the Next.js app router way, what your code is doing. Next.js handles routing via the file system. The file is likely sitting in a Next.js handles routing via the file system. This file is likely sitting in a folder structure like this, like app, nodes, ID, page, because this is a server component. Okay, this is a server component. The component is executed on the backend server before it ever reaches the user's browser. The server already knows the URL being requested. Okay, URL being requested. Instead of forcing you to use a client-side hook, Next.js injects the URL parameter directly into your page component as a prompt. Oh yeah, Next.js injects the URL parameters directly into your page component as prompts. Bam, param, bam. Let's look exactly at the line you asked. This is a standard JavaScript destructuring, of course, wrapped in a strict TypeScript. Okay, in TypeScript, Next.js automatically passes a param object, to every dynamic page. You're destructuring it out of generic props. Yeah, of course, we are destructuring it out of generic props object. Promise ID, the TypeScript definition in modern Next.js versions 15 plus. Params is asynchronous. It is a promise you are telling TypeScript. Accept a promise. It's a promise. Okay, params is a promise. Modern Next.js versions. You're telling TypeScript expect a promise. When this promise resolves, it will yield an object containing an ID. When this promise resolves, it will yield an object containing an ID that is a string. uh, ID await params, because params is a promise, you must await it. Of course, once resolved, you extract the ID from the URL. Get note by ID. Convert the string 42 into a number and fetch the data directly from your database or a mock service. No use effect, no loading states. It happens. मैं कोई ऐसा गीत गाऊं, आरज़ू जगाऊं, कोई ऐसा गीत सुचका अगर तुम कहो हाय, अगर तुम कहो हाय. You convert it. Okay, no use effects, no loading states. It happens instantly on the server. अगर तुम कहो मैं तो तुम्हारे साथ हूँ, तुम क्या मिले, हम क्या मिले, हम रह गए तुम्हारा. कुछ भी कर गुजर जाऊंगा मैं तुम्हारे खातिर. 더럽다. What if I do like this only? कितना गंदा इंसान हूँ, नहाता भी नहीं है मैं. गर्मी हो गया यार. The exact term for this syntax is generic type applied to a promise, commonly referred to as typed promise. Here is the architecture breakdown of the concept so you can internalize it and we can move forward. In JavaScript, a promise is a container for a value that does not exist yet but will resolve in the future. Ha ha ha. Ta, ta, ta. Le beat Saja. Hey, hey, hey. Hoi. Hoist. Hoisting. modern next years. Because what will resolve in the future? Because modern next years evaluates dynamic routes asynchronously on the server. It cannot hand you the URL parameter, the exact millisecond the component wants. Instead, it hands you a promise, a log promise that says, wait a moment, and I will give you. The angle brackets. The angle brackets are types of matrix. Conceptually, they act as a shipping user attached to the answer log. A. Hi, Kairu-san. 僕のチャンネルのメンバーになりました。Conceptually, they act as a strict shipping label attached to the outside of that log promise box. When you write promise ID string, you're explicitly commanding the TypeScript compiler. When this box finally opens, resolves, I guarantee the payload inside will be an object. Oh, hey, I guarantee the payload inside will be an object containing a property named ID, and the value of that ID will be a string. Hi. Thumbnail.
そう。それ